Um, but I guess we could start on the intro. I mean, we have just while we're hanging out, we have we've been doing these weekly sort of loosely React based chats, mostly weekly, that have been going pretty well. And our next one is going to be tomorrow afternoon. Actually, we're doing a Friday at 3. So they've been all kind of just low key, and they've all been fun. So if anybody is free tomorrow for a call around 3, we'll be here on Zoom again. So it'll be the same kind of deal. If you RSVP to the meetup, you'll get the link to the Zoom room. We got some more people coming in. And if we have follow-up, I'm not sure if Dave's going to be there or not, but I'm sure we can have follow-up questions if anybody comes up with anything. And everything like that. I'm trying to get to the link here so I can post it in the chat. But we also have another event scheduled on the 7th of May. So that's 2 weeks from today. It's going to be a different kind of style. It's actually going to be a remote workshop that we are running. Dale Lotz is one of our members, is going to be doing a workshop where we create a resume app in React. So I'll put the message here the link here in the chat. But if you're not RSVP to that and that interests you, it should be kind of fun. It'll be cool to do a little more of a workshop thing. So Dale will be running people through start to finish, actually deploying a working React app that is, and he's using sort of a resume thing as like the basis for it. So it should be cool. Dale's done a lot of teaching like this in the past, so I am excited about that as well. As far as more future events, I mean, we have a couple leads, but I am, especially with these times being what they are, I'm super down with experimenting and trying out some different things. So if anybody has anything that they would like to try to present to the group, or like do a workshop with the group, or I don't know, a roundtable, anything like that, we are always looking for people to kind of contribute, and so we can kind of keep having events. I have been tricking people into doing events, and it's been going pretty well, but that's only going to get me so far. So so that's that. Before I get any further, does anybody else have any like announcements or anything interesting coming up that they'd like to share with the group? We kind of always ask this at every meetup. We have some videos and some, I can't see if anybody's nodding or not. Usually everybody just like shakes their head at me, but please share with the group if we have other meetups. I know there's some other meetups, active. The Vue meetup is going pretty strong. Dave, I don't know if you guys are working on any remote events. I forgot to look before the meetup. Are you guys doing any remote events with when we make the internet?
I have completely failed on that front. Dylan and I have been trying to put some stuff together as of last month before all this madness occurred, and then I think we all just kind of went to our houses and are hibernating now. So
yeah,
that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
When we have a better idea of when this is all lifted, then we can finally release a date, but it's kind of just in the air.
Yeah. I'm sort of like I said, this is my first time kind of managing a group like this. I'm using, all right, they dropped off. I was just going to ask for a vote about whether I should admit a user based on their username, but they left, so we're gonna move on from that.
Sorry, I clicked it. Sorry about that. That's my bad.
Oh, you clicked remove? Oh, no, that's fine.
Yeah. Well,
that was where I was leaning towards. It was just like, funny enough that I was going to.
No, I think this is good. So just as a reminder, we have a code of conduct for the group. You're going to hear my kid howling while I'm unmuted. Don't worry, I'm going to mute the entire talk. But we do have a code of conduct, so don't be weird. Don't be a creep. If anything happens, Dan is one of the organizers. John Knapp is one of the organizers. You probably tell Dave too, and he'll just halt everything. You don't have to tell Dave. I'm just joking.
Halt.
But please feel free to bring anything up if anything happens, if you feel weird or anything like that. Be nice, don't be jerks, don't do anything weird.
Yes, we have an official, policy that is pretty much that. Anyway, um, definitely hit me up. We will be kicking people out very swiftly when anything like that happens. But I trust everybody that is still here are real people and want to be here. I don't know if everybody's here is on the Slack, but we have the the Cleveland Tech Slack. We're always pushing. We are very often on the Cleveland Tech Slack. I put the link just now in the little Zoom chat. So we hang out in the Cleveland, what is it, like the CLEJS room a lot. Also just all the different random rooms. So if you are looking for some day-to-day community, I'm sorry, I'm getting a private message here from John, so it's, I'm like having trouble with defocusing. All right. John, is there any more news or any sort of anything else we need to go through before I turn it over to Dave?
Nope, not really. Just
yeah.
Be nice online. Don't do anything weird and creepy because you're at your own home. Don't DM anybody, anything creepy. Be good people. And then you mentioned the upcoming workshop that we're doing, right?
Yes.
Cool.
Yep, we got the workshop in a couple weeks. We got our next like random chat is tomorrow at 3.
So just one more thing along the lines with the workshop. If you really love the idea, but you cannot do that day or time, just let us know as well. I'm not saying that we can necessarily accommodate, but we are interested to see who is interested in that type of thing. We kind of already like internally played around with a few dates and options and possibility of weekend versus evening and all that kind of stuff. So if it's something that you think is cool, let us know, even if it isn't necessarily aligned with what we kind of chose as a first pass.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that vein, if anybody ever has any feedback for us, like, please just send it to us. I've been sort of working from time to time on trying to put together a poll to kind of gather information about everyone that is in the meetup, but time is limited these days, at least for me. And so we are always open to feedback though. So we want to hear from you guys. And I put this in the message, but we're also on Twitter now at Cleveland React. So if you feel like following another account on Twitter, we've been posting some stuff about the meetup, but also some React related, interesting links and stuff like that. So go ahead and follow us if you feel like it. And I think with that, we're going to move on to Dave. If you're ready, Dave. I don't know. I've known Dave for a while. Dave's been around for a long time. He's been doing this for a long time. And let's see, what is he? I'm sorry, I was checking my Zoom notifications here. I was going to try to come up with a different bio than what Dave wrote, but Dave says he is a fake programmer who only learned to code because he couldn't afford to hire anybody. He broke Google for 10 years straight and eventually got decent enough to trick people into paying him money for his products. He's happy to share what he knows and learn from others like you. Without any further nonsense from me, I present Dave Kiss. Take it away, Dave.
I can't believe you read that. Wow, that's like it's one thing when you hear it coming out of your own mouth or your own brain, and then somebody else says it and just feels very real now. So, hey, I'm Dave. How's it? My whole setup honestly switched around like 5 minutes prior to joining the call because I had the same problem as you, Cam, yesterday. Zoom suddenly ignored all my cameras, so now I'm down here and I don't look as good, and the audio is a little messy, but hopefully this is okay. We'll go along, but. Thanks, Dan, for the intro. My name is Dave. I am really a trained. I thought I was going to get into film and motion graphics and do some sort of, I don't know, job in that world. And I quickly, I don't know, I had been doing that forever. I thought I was going to, like lifelong dream when I was in high school, even just like pursuing motion graphics. And that's like sort of the stuff you see on TV, or in commercials, or, during the Super Bowl, that sort of stuff flying all around. And I really liked that. And I really liked video and storytelling. And something happened in college after, of course, I went into all the college debt, that it sort of had to just change. I had to figure out a way to put all these videos that I was making online, and there was no real great way, easy way for me to do that at the time, other than YouTube. But I wanted them on my own website, right? So I was just like trying to figure out, what do I do next? I honestly, I write that bio out of just this place where I like to bring myself down to. I don't like to be looked up at any sort of pedestal. I like to bring myself down in any way that I can. So when I wrote and figured out that first website, I sort of realized that I just like that method of work. I like nobody bugging me, and I like being creative at the computer and all of that. So really did just fall into a lot of this stuff, but really at the heart of what I still am passionate about is video and storytelling. And I'm really intrigued by motion graphics and coming up with ways to tell stories really with motion and animation and video. And a lot of that still is applicable on the web. And so a lot of what I work on day to day is, man, this audio is just so tinny. Let's try this for now. A lot of what I work on day to day is video related, and I do try to implement a lot of animation and motion into the apps that I work on now. So fast forward, I mean, when was that? 2009. So 10 plus years. Now I run my own business. I'm selling video related software on the web, and currently building a new project. New. I'm a year in on it. That is React based, basically a video platform for businesses, where I use, the whole platform, or the whole stack is JavaScript. And React is heavily used throughout the whole project. So I thought this might be an interesting, fun way to sort of share a couple of different strategies that I use to not only like allow myself to express creativity with the motion and animation interests that I have, but really think about good ways to leverage animation and motion in our apps, and why that's a good thing to do. So just thinking about that, well, first of all, get your beers out. I like to cheers everybody, or your water, or whatever you're drinking. I cracked open a zombie dust because it's a special night. This doesn't happen all the time. So cheers. Thanks for joining. And I was just thinking about this glitch thing. So what I'm going to do is share my screen, which will probably take over, right? So unless you have two screens, sorry, I guess you can look at the project later if you want to remix it or whatever. But if you were just looking at it for reference anyway, you can just follow along on my screen. So incoming, let's do this. How do I do that? Okay, here we go. Desktop. Coming in. All right, everybody got that? Okay, thumbs up, Dylan. Cool. All right, so hi, I'm Dave. You have access to, I can move you guys out of the way. You have access to all this code. It's yours. Have fun. Play with it. Break it. Not right now, though. So I want to talk a little bit before I even get going here about what's the point of animation? It is neat, I think, and I have this passion for it, but there's real reasons for using some of this stuff in your apps. And I was just following, I don't know where this happened. I happened across this guy talking about some of the ways that he uses animation in his project. And it really resonated with me, and I saved it so I could bring it up here, but just kind of walk through a little bit of this. And I'm just going to read what he says and then comment on it a little bit. So I guess you could read it too. But one thing I've always strived for, this idea of transformative UI, which is UI that adapts, morphs, and transforms to the next step of the interaction pattern. So, if you think about that, everything that we experience in life as humans, we are taking in with our sensories, right? And specifically, for those of us that have our visions, we're able to experience and take in all of these our environment, but we don't ever on the web when we're like clicking a button and something goes from A to B without any sort of transition or transformation. That's nothing like what we experience in real life, right? Like we always what he says here, it's like watching a basketball disappear and reappear 20 yards away because it's a football. Like it's just this idea that things don't just suddenly become something else. There's always this momentum, this transition between states, right? From basketball's over here, I rolled it, it's still basketball, and it's over there. Like it sounds silly, but this is how we experience life. And so I think that's really why when we have these experiences of UI that incorporate these animations, they're so interesting and intuitive, and they just feel nice, don't they? Like when you see that, it feels nice because it's so much closer to what we're used to experiencing in real life. So he's just got a couple examples in this thread of how some of this movement is so natural and the reasons why it can be applied back to the app itself in the context that it's used in. What's this dude? So even just this popping up, popping down. So again, like when you open your desk drawer, right, it doesn't just like go from close to open. There's this transition period. And so he's just kind of giving through all of these different little examples, but I really like this thought. And it's really what drives me to a lot of the experiences and the apps that I build to try to incorporate this as much as possible with as little, or trying to be as subtle as possible, frankly. Like it's really easy to overdo a lot of different animations. So trying to just incorporate this where it makes sense is a good way to start bringing it in. So I just want to kind of go over why some of this stuff is important. And then a couple different strategies that I use. I mean, there's honestly countless number of ways to figure out how to incorporate what libraries you want to use or what approach or what methods, but these are I just have a list of a bunch of different ones that I've incorporated over time, and sort of how I'll talk about some of the evolution that I've gone through and how they've been brought into the projects. I can share a little bit of the code. This was honestly thrown together in a few hours, so don't shame me too much if you see some not so great practices, or actually do shame me. I need that. And also, if you want to, please leverage the chat in Zoom so that this is more of an interactive experience and you're not just sitting back watching some dummy talk for 45 minutes, because that's kind of boring. So use that. You can send questions, you can talk to one another, whatever. It's not going to bother me. So let's talk about transitions first. Probably there's some people in here that are like, transitions not React. Right? And you're right. Like transitions all are handled within the browsers that you're using every day, and it's kind of what makes them so great, so accessible. They're compatible with the different browsers that you're used to using. It's a native feature, so there's nothing special that you need to learn outside of how browsers work and how CSS is constructed. And so this is still a really, really important way to leverage animation in your app, and it's a really low level way to interact with the browser. It's a very easy way to start getting some of your animations incorporated. And one of the ways that I just have this little button here that I have set up, that's if we explore the code over here, let me bring up transitions. So some of this stuff is irrelevant. I just use it because it's easier. Using this library called style components that just helps you write some CSS in line here. So what's happening if I just go over some of this? This is basically this little button, the switch that I made, right? And when I'm clicking on this button, it's applying, right, I mean, I'm handling it through React State, so you can kind of see that the toggle is happening right here. Every time I click this button, it's changing the state. And then the applied classes over here is UOM on, UOM off. So based on, I mean, there's two ways that you can handle it here, but based on what the classes that's applied, if you have that class in your CSS, you will see the state represented as in that class. So, I mean, that's assuming that you do have your transition properties set up and your transforms are all configured here. So the other way that I'm handling it, if you're not familiar with style components, how this is actually performed within this particular example is I have this on parameter being passed to the switch, and I check it here. So based on if the toggle is on, it's a certain color, otherwise it's white. Same here, if it's on, background color is white, otherwise it's not. And so that's sort of what you're seeing there. So there's two different approaches here for using transitions, one with style components and one with if you were just using this class. They're great. It's a great way to animate. It's really nice because you don't have to introduce any sort of new tech. It's all there. Nobody has to learn anything outside of what is provided by the browser. They're also some of the transitions are hardware accelerated, so it can be some of the workload is processed by your GPU rather than the CPU, which is nice. You know, it's always nice. You know, if you have some animations on the web, the one thing to really need to consider is performance. Nobody likes to see animations that are moving and you start getting all jittery and stuttery across the screen. So anything that you can do to try to make those animations smoother is always going to be a favor for your app and for your audience. And so transforms and translates for best performance. So there's also this, I just have a couple links throughout this whole thing that you can check out on your own time, but there's another library that was really one of the earlier ways that a lot of these transitions were handled, React Transition Group, which just applies different classes based on the state of the component that you're using. So you can imagine a scenario where you set up a style sheet that has the classes that you want to represent based on the state that the component is in. And those are all just sort of cascaded and applied based on what this transition group library applies to the component given its state. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm already talking too much. Okay, cool. So moving on. Keyframes. Another way that's handling some sort of motion animation right within the browser. Native to the browser, right? So a lot of this code, I'll show you where that's at, but it's just CSS. So all this stuff is just provided by the browser, by the CSS construct. And again, I'm sure it's kind of boring because it's not React. It's not React really, but the point is, how do we bring in some of this stuff into our React app? And this is still a very valid way, and a way that I still do it with both of these approaches. Again, whoops, sorry about that. Again, you're not incorporating another library, so it keeps your package weight down, right? There's not another dependency that you have to be concerned about. It's all just native to the browser. So I'm just sort of having some fun over here with these two examples. But if I bring up take a look at the code, all that has happened here for this first dude to be sort of breathing like that is it has this class name that's applied, keyframes demo. That's it. Same for this bottom here, this placeholder, or this box, I guess this rainbow box. Class name is placeholder. So I marked here that this is good. I think it's pretty good for using it for loops, for stuff that you just set it and forget it, and it's just sort of running when it's on the screen. Whether that's something like this, like background, which in my app, I use something similar to this when we have either, I mean, in my case, it's when a video is still being processed before the video displays, it's being transcoded. So it's just something nicer to look at than just like a X or a gray box or something. And then this is, something that can be used for grabbing your attention, or I think this particular one, I have a heartbeat on my homepage that was just going through this little keyframed animation here to allow, I just saw Dave's bio is why I came. Thank you, Louis. That's awesome. This allows you to, I lost my train of thought. Moving on. So let's look at the code here. So we have keyframes demo. this is the top box, right? And I have it just styled the way that I want to, but the only thing that's making it move is this animation property, right? So I'm saying that apply the animation breathe, called breathe, which I just named it whatever down here. And I have these keyframes that are assigned to it that allow you to modify what that state of that element in the DOM looks like at 0%, 50%, 100% through the way of the animation. And there's some additional properties over here that just say, do this forever for the rest of my life, as long as I ever am my rest of my death. 6 seconds on a loop. And we're using this other property ease, which is sort of a way to define a curve. We'll talk a little bit more about that too, but a lot of animations by default on the web are linear, which means they go from A to B. And the only calculations that are happening are the differential, right? So it's like if you want to move from 0 to 20, then it's going to 0 to 20 on this linear time scale. And where some of these curves come into play is trying to mimic the same thing that we see happen in real life. Again, kind of going back to what our dude guy was talking about, Morgan. This is not, we don't experience things to just go from A to B all the time. When we say you're driving your car and you come into a stoplight, you gradually are slowing down. You're not just slamming on the brakes from 60 to 0. So we tried to emulate this sort of friction or this ease through the different curves that are available. And there's a ton of different curves and algorithms that I can't even explain. And I generally don't go too far past, some bounce stuff and some ease in and ease out. But we'll talk a little bit more about that moving forward. And then this bottom one here, placeholder, you see we have this gradient as the background. It's a super big gradient. And then it's applying this animation to just move the background position around based on what time in the animation that we're at. It's just doing that for the rest of my life and death too. I really think that's a nice touch. Thanks, Dave. So let's see. Does anybody have any questions about either of those two before let me check the chat? I don't know how to check the chat. I'm just looking kind of quiet.
I was just saying in the chat, if you're following along, if you open that link in your own browser, all of these animations are going to be super smooth. If you're looking at the screen share, they're a little, chunky.
Yeah, good point. I probably should have mentioned that.
No, I mean, yeah, that link is there in the chat. So if if anybody's following along, I would check them both out.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. So obviously, my computer is like catching on fire right now because I'm sharing screens and running animations, which doesn't really equate to great performance. Check it out on your end for sure. Make it look a little bit better. I found that out the hard way because a lot of the app that I'm working on, I'll show you some of it, but I have a lot of animation throughout. And one of the demos that I was trying to do for a prospective client or customer, I was trying to sell them on this idea of, oh, look at all this animation they could do. And by the end of the call, they were just like, well, it doesn't really look that good. I'm like, shit, like, that's what happened. Okay. So now I'm very careful about how much I generally share over Zoom. But imagine we're all in the same room and you're just looking at the projector and it just looks awesome. I'm like, dang, that looks good. Okay. And it really doesn't look that good, let's be honest. Cool. So a little bit more about this physics idea. The way that browsers are typically animating are through, Dan, before I go into this, what time do I need to shut up? Because I never even ran through any of this. I'm just babbling.
I think I don't know. I don't really care. I think I put 8:30 on the
okay
thing.
All right, we got time.
I don't know, 8:30. It doesn't.
Okay, cool.
8:30 is fine. Whatever.
All right. So a little bit more about theory here. These curves are all based on time, right? We're feeding a time value. This is 6 seconds, and we're saying through that 6 seconds, apply this time curve. But the other weird part about life, and another weird part about life, there's many weird parts about life, is our physics don't operate on time. They don't care about time. I mean, we measure them by time, right? But we don't watch the snowfall and say like it took that long. After the fact, we could say that, but during, anything can happen, right? So we on the web and traditionally through a lot of motion graphics, we've simulated this idea of this friction or this gravity or other physics by manipulating the curve that's as it's applied across time, right? So sorry, we're getting a little bit into the weeds here, but physics do matter because it changes the way that you perceive things to appear, right? And that's true with a lot of, if you look at your iPhone and you're you're closing your apps or opening an app or something, Apple they're not using curves for a lot of that stuff, which is weird, right? So like we have in the browser, we are used to using all of these different curves, but moving forward, a lot of the new approaches for animation is really incorporating physics algorithms that say, hey, let's not care so much about the time. Like we have a general idea of how quickly something needs to happen or within what measurement, but what we change instead are the properties of the thing that's moving. So, instead of saying, take 6 seconds, let's say this car or this like cartoon guy is 400 pounds. So he's not going to move as quickly. But if we want him to move quicker, then we adjust, how much he exercises, or we adjust that was a terrible analogy, but imagine I came up with something great. So we change the properties, how much friction, how like sandy the sandpaper is, will, change how frequently or how fast it can move across a table. Same for, I don't know, snowfall, like in the wind. If we have more wind, it's going to change how long it takes for it to come to the ground. So you get the idea, right? So that's where some of these other libraries are really interesting, is that you can bring in some of this concept of not time-based, but physics-based animation. And so this first one I want to talk about a little bit, which is great because I didn't really showcase any sort of beautiful physics in any of this stuff because it just honestly wasn't a huge priority for me. But you guys are great. You're a big priority for me. Let's look at the code for some of this. So first I want to click on this little link here and just go over their brief explanation, which is like, this library is called React Spring, and it's incorporating Spring physics into your group. Again, look at this on your screen and really get an idea of what that bounciness looks like. And even just this top one here, you can sort of imagine or guesstimate what those properties are, right? Like this thing is like on a reel, it's almost like a door stopper, right? Where it's like flipping around, super lightweight, super boingy, very cool, but not really, no consideration to how long this takes. The decay on this is insane. Like this is still going, this is not delayed. I mean, I'm sure it is for you, but like that was like a 15-20 second animation. It's because they're not animating on time. And so I just want to look here at this little paragraph, why springs and not durations. This is really worthwhile to just drill this point home for you. So I would encourage you to just read through this little blurb. But it's basically, we're used to this time-based animation historically, but there's a lot of help in how to implement spring physics moving forward. So I think it's something that we should generally try to start implementing in our apps moving forward. And the good part is all of the hard stuff is figured out by people that are way smarter than you or me. I mean, maybe not you, but definitely me. So you don't really have to learn a lot of hard stuff. You can still provide it the values that you need to in order to get from point A to point B. And then all of the hard stuff is just calculated by the algorithms. So I encourage you to read through that. But now I can show you my example of a spring physics opacity change from 0 to 1. There's no reason really to ever do this in your life. But I also have another example of spring physics applied to a list here. So let's just, I mean, you can do this on your end as well, but if you click this button to toggle, you'll see that the two animations apply. So the top one is just an opacity change from 0 to 1. It's not linear, it's not curves. The numbers are calculated based on the properties of really nothing. I mean, there's just this default configuration, this is hidden behind a curtain somewhere if you don't provide it. So it's saying like, yeah, this thing that we're animating has a mass and a tension and friction assigned to it. And that's all just being taken care of. So based on what those values are, that's how long that opacity is going to take. The opacity change. Does that make sense? I'm imagining you all like nodding your head and saying like, wow, this is really great.
So just quickly, this kind of way is not an exact science. Like you don't know it's going to be a 2-second animation. You kind of are just playing with these numbers to make it look the way you want it.
Right. Yeah. You can time box it a bit, and if you really need to get down to the hey, this has to happen quickly within this time frame, there are properties that allow you to sort of feed or at least simulate some of that. But exactly, like they provide a very sensible default for using spring physics for web animation. So they assume like, hey, these aren't like bowling balls or whatever. Like these are little springy little elements that need to be moved around in this fashion, this capacity. So it's a really nice default, and then you can go in and change it if you want to. But generally, the default works really, really nice. The one situation and instance in the app that I'm building that I've used and tweaked the tension, or I think it was really the mass, was this dude when you submit a form on the website, there's like this happy looking box that's just like, hey, and I want him to look like he was jumping a little bit, and it was just springing up too quickly, so I played with that a little bit. But yeah, they have a really nice default for like UI, and then if you want to change that, you just kind of go in and tweak it. That's a good question though. So yeah, this other one here, React Spring provides a bunch of different ways to tap into their physics library. There's the use Spring, which is just you want to change basically one value or the properties of one particular, what they're calling a spring, which generally means an element, right? But honestly, a spring can be anything. Even I'm changing the opacity here, but I could just put like, n here, and I just am assigning these spring values to n, and then I use that spring value to do, I don't know, anything, like, hook it up to the Roomba or some, I don't know, but like there's ways to leverage these defaults, and the defaults are provided by all like 4 or 5 different hooks that React Spring uses. Pretty cool library, and I encourage you to sort of dig into their docs a little bit. But this one I actually just ripped right from their examples page, did not write it, so don't give me any credit. So this is a trail, right? So this is the bottom one. We have these 5 different elements that I'm spreading the properties across, parameters across, and it's sort of delaying in this trail-like fashion to reveal each element or each line in this cascading manner, right? So a couple of different things that we're changing there, providing the config that was defined up here, changing the opacity. We want the X parameter to be modified, this is really, again, like that N that I was talking about. This is the same thing. We're just changing a number X, and then down here, I'm applying that I'm interpolating it, which just means like, give me that value basically, as it exists right now. And then applying it to that translate 3D, what was that? Translate 3D property that you're used to or that exists right in CSS if you're not used to it. So where was I? Height here is changing from 0 to 80 based on if this button is toggled. And then from is the start state when the page loads. This is where we want it to be. So we're providing it. We're saying, hey, we got, I'm using this items array up here, and there's 5 entries. I want Rosati's custard now, which is true. They're not open yet for the year. I don't know. I haven't gotten any updates. 5 items in that array. So we're saying, hey, we have a trail of 5 items and we want to cascade basically through, we create this trail effect through and apply it to each of those 5 items. So each one should have this from and go through this transformation. So library says, yo, that sounds great. Here's the trail. So, and all of this is just straight from their docs, honestly. Like there's nothing I'm going to teach you here that's unique or special about React Spring in 25 minutes. When I have some other ones to talk about too, but if you look at their docs, they can explain how some of this is being applied. But we're basically going over every entry in that trail and creating this animated div, which is their version of like just a div that has the ability to be animated. I guess that makes sense. And for each part in that trail, we're applying that trail parameters to that animated div right here, right? And so I have some additional styles that are applied through this class name trails text, which is just like, hey, make it big, make it pink, maybe add some padding or line height or font size or whatever. And then it just is applying all of that for you and taking care of the updates and all of the animation. You're not actually saying anything else about the timing or anything like that. It just is getting cascaded through. So it's a pretty neat way to incorporate some real life, good looking spring physics here. Now, I know that you guys don't have a really great view of my screen. It's a little jittery, but I'll show you some of this in real life, real world application. So I have this is the app that I'm building now. And part of what I like to introduce as a selling point, as a value add, is for it's a video platform, like I said, but the video player itself is sort of this flexible, sort of mushy, squishy sort of player that can adjust the way that it presents itself at specific times during the video. And why would you want to do that? Well, if you want to like get somebody to sign up for something that you just mentioned in your video, maybe want to present them with a sign up form at that specific time during the video. And some of this stuff is nothing new or anything. If you've seen like a YouTube annotation that gets overlaid over the top of the video, or even like links at the end of the video. Wistia's got some stuff like that if you're familiar with them. But what I am trying to introduce is this, it's sort of on this grid that can be modified or changed based on these different actions or these different basically triggers that are modifying that layout. So this particular one is using React Spring to say, hey, if this is, let's just say on, right? If we're at 3 seconds in this video, then apply this spring. So we're no longer applying a full screen, but I'm feeding it values to say exist on this grid at 2% from the left and 5% from the top, and whatever, and reveal this other element that's here. So during playback of this video, this animation just occurs, which looks way better, and it's something you should totally sign up for on your side than on mine. But it's this really compelling way to not take the viewer's eye away from the video entirely. You still know where they're looking, but we just have additional content to go along with that video. So that's just sort of one way that I've implemented these good looking spring physics into the app that I'm building. So here's where things sort of went. I got a bad taste in my mouth with React Spring. The API for using some of this stuff is kind of technical looking. And for some people that are like ultra developers, which maybe some of you are here, that might be like you sort of like the challenge, or I don't know, there's something for me that like I don't think I have a typical like a programmer approach or programmer brain to the problems. I just like to be easy. Maybe we all do. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I want some sort of like straightforward way to apply a lot of these stuff. I'm typically like some of the examples on React Spring's website are really awesome and really complex, and I just don't see myself going that far into the library to be able to leverage some of that stuff, or to want to leverage some of that. Like they have like cards flying around, like a deck of cards and stuff. And here I am like trying to fade between stuff or like reveal a menu. So I just started like, I don't know, I've incorporated some cool ones. Like I'll show one other example over here while I got you, I guess. This little annotation in the corner. This might not be, again, too great on the performance coming through, but we have this. This is one of their hooks called use chain that is basically performing multiple animations. So we go from, there's multiple components receiving multiple animations and they're being orchestrated one after the other, basically. So this was really a challenge to kind of put this thing together where this icon zooms in and after it hits the pad of the video, then it quickly goes across and reveals the content that, we define in the app. Very cool. I really liked this effect. It feels very organic and like it's not designed by any of us software developers, or it's not just a gray box in the corner. It feels like there's some organic movement. There's a lot of design that's paid attention to. And if you look at YouTube's annotations, they're just boxes, which, I don't, first of all, YouTube's trying to keep you there as long as possible, not send you anywhere else. So I think it's not in their benefit to design that stuff really well. But anyway, that's not the point of this talk. So anyway, it's a very capable tool, but a lot of the stuff that I was trying to do with it wasn't even necessary to dive into some of that. So last year I came across this other library called Framer Motion. I was using one of their other ones called Pose, and they recently like rewrote it, or I don't know, reintroduced this newer, rewritten, again, I don't know. I don't really know how it came about, but looking at their API, Framer Motion, I should have a link on here for that. I can add it. It's way easier for me to sort of understand and work with, and it doesn't take away from the main objective, which is really like, I want my app to look good and work and, have a really intuitive user interface, but it doesn't require me to sort of dive into like all the math and all the spreading props and all this like additional, what doesn't seem like it has to be too super necessary in order to apply some of these animations, right? So we saw that. Maybe I'll just switch between the two, but I did that 360 there. Whoa, I mean, completely impractical, but that's one of their approaches to their animation. And I should mention that these are also all operating off of the same idea of Spring Physics as well. So we're getting this same effect, but with a just different API, basically. Sorry, I'm just catching up on the chat right now. Frame Motion, just found out about it. Yeah, it's awesome. Did you say if this works in React Native? Honestly, Peter, I have very little experience with React Native, so you'd have to look. I want to say I've seen something like that, but you'd have to look at the docs. I'm not sure.
Cool, looking it up now.
Okay, cool. So we're operating on Spring Physics still, but this API is so much easier for me to understand and provide these values to. So let's break it down real quick. So we have two animations here. One is this guy, which again, I'm using these style components. So I just applied this styled only to, I mean, I didn't even style this, honestly. I give it blue and I made it bigger, but they provide, just like React Spring has animated.div or animated.h1 or animated.p, same thing here. So you say, they were just calling a motion, right? So motion.h1, motion.p, motion.div. So I'm just creating this motion h1, which just says, hey, this thing's going to move around. So something happens behind the scenes that just prepares it for that approach or that encounter. All right, so we're just using this h1. Let's just assume it's h1 down here. And there's two values that I apply here. Look at this. So dumb. Okay, so they have animate. And this is what this is what I want it to do. I want it to rotate 360 degrees. And how long do I want it to take? This is something that, again, you don't have to provide this stuff. But I don't know. I think I had it at 15 earlier, and I was just giggling in bed, just watching it do some stupid stuff. Yeah, look at that. So dumb. But that's it. So what it knows to do is say, look at the initial state, which is itself. I didn't define an initial state here. And when this component mounts, then just go through this animation. So is it like when I first switched to this, I was like, that's it? Like there's no hooks, there's no like programmer speak or programmer talk to learn or a new library. It's just like these little prompts that you just pass these different values for. Of course, this is a very basic, impractical use case or approach to an animation, but what isn't impractical is animating components when they appear on screen. So you can apply, I'm sure, a better looking animation of just something. I mean, honestly, we could probably do it right now, but something fade in and maybe like move up on the y-axis 20 pixels, so it has this like fade in and appear sort of thing. And you do that just with these two. Honestly, one parameter will get that done. Too much talking, not enough beer. Any questions so far? Okay then. All right, so we have this other one that I'll show you as well. Sorry, looking at the chat again. Yeah, Cam, I mentioned that, but I honestly, I don't know what the secret is that they're requiring you to apply the animated div or the motion div. There's something that happens there that just prepares it to get ready for animating. Where is the anchor set? So thanks, Luis. That's a good question. For this particular one, I honestly didn't look at it close enough, but that can be changed with the properties. So I didn't mention that before, but in our keyframes example, I have this transform origin. So this is saying like there's an anchor on the box that we're giving it to say this is where the animation should occur, right? So without like going through a live code fail, which I might if I try that, I would imagine that that's the approach that you would take in order to modify the anchor on that sort of thing. There might be something in the docs that says that there's a different approach. But that's just worth something looking into. So framer. So here's the other one. This little guy down here. So we have this list that's just cascading in. Again, sort of like this other example that we did with Rosati's, but sung to the tune of "This is how we do it." It's Friday night, tomorrow. So we have this toggle. This button, every time I click it, is changing this state from either show to hide, basically. And why did I call them this? Well, these could be anything, right? But these are special names only because I've also used them up here. Wait, did I ever use this? I might. Yeah, there it is. So this dude. Okay. I use them up here, right? So I define these names of these two states. This could be anything. This could be on and off. This could be left to right. This could be backwards, forwards, whatever you want to call it. But you just need to be consistent with the names that you're using here. And so I say, hey, this container is going to have, when it's in the hide state, it's going to have the opacity of 0. And this transition that it goes through, again, that's something right from their API docs, but any children of this particular element, we want to apply the stagger time to that animation. So it's waiting 100 milliseconds or 1/10 of a second when it's doing the stagger on the hide, and 3/10 of a second when it's showing. And the stagger is obviously like when does that next animation occur. So this isn't necessarily how long does that animation take, but just a delay on introducing the animation. So we have we provide the variance to this ordered list down here, and the initial is the hide, right, which is up here. And then the animate, so when it mounts, we want it to go to whatever we have in our state here. So we start off on show. So we're going from hide to show. And just by switching that out from hide to show here, it applies the spring physics from what we've defined up here in our initial state, basically. So again, just to click on that, we're getting this 0.3 second delay between the opacity change from 0 to 1, and a little bit quicker on the way out. So again, trivial example, but I think it helps to showcase the difference, at least in the API design, where it feels to me like it's just a little bit more out of the way, and still very capable. So again, there's a lot more that I really didn't dive into much there, but hopefully it's describing enough for you to encourage which one might be a right decision, or something to explore for your own apps. Any questions on any of the Spring stuff? Because I'm going to completely shift gears. I'll leave the chat open for a sec.
Yeah, I actually had a quick question about on Framer. The variants, is that are those like CSS properties, or like how does that translate to? Does it just have its own language, or is it like using CSS? Because like staggered children, I don't think is a CSS thing, right? Like you know what I mean? Like
Right.
when you're setting the different variants that you transition, you know, the initial, and then you know you animate to with Framer.
Yeah.
How they set that up?
Yeah, good question. So as far as I understand it, some of these are CSS properties and some of them aren't, right? So it will know like which ones are valid properties. There's also helper properties, so that like I think I can just change scale. I don't know. Let's try it, but oh my god. Again, my keyboard is unplugged.
Yeah, I mean, in your
Scale.
basic example, like rotate isn't on its own a CSS property,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So it will provide these little helpers that are just allowing you to just provide the shorthand, basically. So scale is not on its own a valid CSS property, but by providing it, it's smart enough to know that we got to transform it to apply to this particular animation. So there's the scale applied there. So yeah, some of them are valid, some of them are helpers, and some of them are just inherent to their API design. Which can get a little tricky, where you might be used to something in CSS and you're like, what the heck, why is it not working? Why do I have to provide scale and not transform or whatever? And I think they really extrapolate that stuff because a lot of times we want to provide a transform on multiple properties that it accepts. So that way we can just break it out to scale and X and Y. Like I think X is one of their valid properties. And what that does is translate on the X axis. Yes. So some are, some aren't, and some is API design. But it's just kind of reference the docs on a lot of that stuff. Any other questions? John hates style components. Yeah, I've been talking to Xavier, and Xavier loves style components. All right, let's talk about these last two, and then if you have any questions at the end, I'm happy to talk a little more. So Lottie is really, 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 really cool. Of course, that's my opinion. But what is it? So we have, honestly, back in the day of OG animations, one of the first animated handlers and browsers implemented was called this language called Smile. I can't even tell you what it stands for, but it's the properties on SVG to allow you to animate the way that it appears on screen. And I had to do a Smile project back in 2007, 2006, maybe, in college. Very declarative language. Not fun. But Lottie is this really. I just give you a little background because SVG animation on the web isn't really anything new, but this particular approach is. So this animation, which is obviously more of like, I don't know, something you would see like on a TV or in a cartoon or something. was not designed. This was not designed on the web in the browser at all. This was a lot of animations, a lot of files are generally designed within a program called Adobe After Effects, which is essentially a design tool that allows you to create, motion. I mean, it's used throughout. It's an industry standard tool for animation and motion graphics. You can do stuff like this with it. You can do stuff that you see on like John Deere commercials or whatever. It's a very versatile tool. But in this particular example, this animation was not even designed on the web. It's not a video. It's an SVG. And there's this tool that Airbnb put out a couple of years ago called Lottie that, and used in parallel with another plugin for After Effects called Body Moving. You basically can design these super cool animations or have somebody else do it if you don't have a skill set like this, and export it from After Effects as this body movement file, which essentially turns, or through body movement, which essentially turns it into a JSON file. Just this like super compressed way to, obviously you have to watch how many frames each animation has, so that it's not like super heavy when it's not overdrawing, but it's a way to compress all of your animations into a JSON file and then use a framework, or I don't know if they call it their framework at their library or what, but called Lottie. And there's a React add-on for that called React Lottie that essentially just allows you to load in the JSON file as animation data, set some default properties to say, this is what I want this animation to look like. I want it to loop. I want it to autoplay. Here's the data for it. And a little bit about how it's rendering to the screen. And then I have this Lottie component where I provide the options and a little bit about its state. Is it moving? Is it not? And the rest, it just does it, which I love this. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of this. In fact, I talked to a friend that's a motion designer at Apple, and they're using a lot of Lottie in their iPhone UI moving forward. So this isn't anything that's going away anytime soon. It's not just an experimental project. Why is this nice? Well, it allows you to not even think about the calculation of physics at all. All this, again, is designed in an external program and then compressed down into a JSON file. So there's no weight on the browser other than just operating this thing, which is drawing the SVG. You have to be careful. Again, you shouldn't go too big on the size and you should use them sparingly, but they are really, really interesting ways to bring in additional nice little UI touches for your app. You can imagine this on something like a loading screen, or I don't know, 404 or something like that. In fact, when I was in Gmail, I saw some, we were just saying like their Google Meet is now a thing, which I was joking with Katie saying that they started getting into Google Meet, MEAT, which might not be too far in the future. But yeah, they had something similar to this. I think that was not a Lottie, but a very similar aesthetic, very similar look. So it's pretty cool way to bring in kind of subtle animation. I think they're using some of the stuff on Giphy. If you hover over some of their icons on their page, a little UI touch that a hover state of an icon isn't just a different color, but it's actually moving around and sparkling or something like that. You can kind of imagine what that would look like. But you can also interact with this thing too, right? So I want to stop the animation, I want to play it, I want to pause it, reset it, go through all that here. So I pulled this one, wash your hands, it's a good idea, from Lottie Files. It's a place where basically a lot of, I catch my breath here. A lot of motion designers are posting these files, a lot of them for free, but they're also opening a marketplace where people can kind of, it's like the Unsplash, which is, open source images. It's open source animation that you can use within your app. So I pulled this one from Lottie Files. Check it out. They have a ton of good stuff there for loaders or just UI aesthetic. Really neat way to have some additional nice looking stuff that's dynamic and relatively lightweight as well. Thanks for the link. And then this last one is something special from from Dave DeSandro, who's I don't know, his story is evolving in the moment, but he was behind one of the first, I think it was a jQuery plugin maybe, but it was like one of the first plugins that allows you to do some Pinterest style, I forget what that's even called, but like Pinterest style columns or whatever. And then he's got a slider. He's got a ton of stuff out. Really brilliant designer in JavaScript dev. He sort of worked on this project secretly for like 2 or 3 years and then just dropped it out of nowhere. And I was very quick to leverage it because I thought it was really, really cool, called ZDog. And I think it's zzz.dog if you want to look at some of the stuff. But it's basically this pseudo, sorry for all the coughs tonight. It's this pseudo 3D stylized animation library that allows you to basically design this like fake 3D world in your little canvas. And I couldn't answer most of it, any questions about a lot of this stuff. I did go through and create a loader when you switch between my pages here in ZDog, where it's just this like little fake 3D little video that's kind of spinning around. And while this is during a React suspense page load. So while that particular that chunk is being loaded and while the HTTP request is being resolved, it's just showing this fun little animation that allows you can actually interact with it too. I don't get there quick enough, but what I do, I broke something. So you can interact with it as well. But it's really this neat way to use some different elements. So you want to say like provide a sphere, or provide a cone, or provide a rectangle and say it's this big. And then you can set it on infinite spin or do this like little loopy thing. I've noticed like a little, and it is all JavaScript, but it's a little bit more taxing on the processes. I think it's a request animation frame, but not entirely sure about the implementation here. I just did notice that my computer wanted to catch on fire before some of the stuff that I was playing around with. So use sparingly, but I think that that's a really neat effect. And you should check out some of Dave's examples on his site because they're very, very interesting, the way that he approaches implementation in this library. Yeah, so then we'll just go to some honorable mentions here, which is, these are all great resources, I said at the beginning, but there's a million different ways to incorporate animation into your app. And it's sort of, what's your use case? What do you like? What's the best interface that you like to interact with? What are your developers like? What are your team like? What are your objectives? What's your business objective? And so there's no right answer for any of this stuff, right? That's just what's applicable. So I have a couple of different links out to other libraries that I've either played with or seen. I've never done any 3JS stuff, but it looks insane. Some of those demos, which I'm not even really sure. I think this use case is more like visualization in games and stuff. But 3JS is really neat. GreenSock does some lightweight SVG animation, or GSAT. React Flip Toolkit was another way to provide some weird transitions from point A to point B. Interesting approach to check out. And then these are just a couple links down here for comparisons between some of the stuff I covered today, some of it that's just not even specific to React. And then you should check out Smile as well, because it was awesome and it pioneered, I think, a lot of the thought for how animation's used in general on the web. And then I don't know, what else did I put down here? And just some other links for you to check out that I think was just a brain dump on some animation stuff. But that's all I have to talk about. If there's any questions, or if you want to try to mimic a animation that we see online, or anything that specifically you want to talk about, I'm open. Oh, everybody left.
Hey, Dave, I got a question.
Oh, there he is.
Is it true that writing styled components makes you a worse developer? I just heard it from myself, but I'm my only coworker right now. So, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean,
I'll take my answer offline. Thank you.
Okay. You're the smartest person in the room, so I mean, you're the only person in the room over there, right?
That's true. I did put 2 kids to bed while you were talking.
Okay.
It wasn't because of your content. They were loving all of the library options that they now have available to them.
That's only because they can't go to the library right now. It's unfortunate. What do you think? What do you want to talk about? How do I chat?
Is there anything
Chat.
that these libraries don't do that you'd rather that they do?
Cam said do. What do I wish library? I think if I could do something that was just like, and maybe this is just the next step, or I need to stop being lazy, but if I could just say like appear, like I just show like an appear state, which I think framer motion is getting close to, but and maybe what appear does is apply some of the stuff, like it already sets up some of the defaults. That's like, hey, our appear effect is scale up a bit and translate Y and opacity, and so that way, like, I don't even write any of this stuff. I just say like, constants dot appear or whatever, and it just applies what their effect is. I think that's kind of a cool way to, I mean, and then if you want to eject and go further into their the guts of the library, you can do that. But I think that'd be a pretty neat way to interact with the library without having to just set up boilerplate stuff that we see in a lot of different animations around the web. How about you?
I have a nerdy question, but have you, like, do you do like just like testing components that happen to be animated? Do you have any experience with any of that? I ask because I'm right now testing some animated things, and like there's transition. The tests are working fine, but they're real slow, and so I'm trying to figure out ways to like, deal with that or get around it or something. I wondered if you had any advice.
Yeah, true. I don't have a lot of good experience with that. I think I mentioned that before. Most of the animations that I do are like kind of dummy proof. There's not a lot of super complex stuff that I get into, but I think, I mean, I honestly, I don't know, but I think you would want to really test the values more than test the library, right? Like, make sure that they're ending up where you expect them to be, the start value and the end value, that your stagger is, it's appearing within the time frame that you told it to do, and what you're not running necessarily through an animation, but maybe there's some way to like hook into without rendering it out to the UI and getting the results that you expect. But again, like a lot of the stuff that I've been working on, it's more like end-to-end test to ensure that something is visible on the screen at all. And if that fails, then the animation's failed. But it's not as much like diving into.
Yeah. No. Yeah. That's. I mean, like that's the route I'm like on the integration test end, but I'm like the integration test is you click on a thing. Oh, my internet connection is unstable, so sorry if I'm dropping out. But you click on a thing and then you wait until the next thing is visible. So I'm trying to figure out ways to make that the test run faster. Really, is just because I'm impatient. That's my whole thing.
Gotcha. I mean, I'm sure other people have opinions on that, but end-to-end testing in general is just kind of a slower process. And so, you have to sort of set your expectations accordingly, and I'll either make room for that, allow for that, or find another way. That's been my experience anyway. Maybe there's a better answer.
So stuff I've seen, I mean, it's going to depend on what your library and stuff is. So some of the examples that Dave had will use like CSS transitions and stuff, and you can disable those, or you can kind of change, like add some little hijack points, stuff like that. I think you do like overrides CSS in there, where you just like transform non-important or something, right? If you're trying to test the animations, that's different. Like you're not going to want to try and probably screw that up or whatever. But I think what I've mostly seen is like just people, you do an abstracted like backdoor method of just stopping stuff or really shortening the animation duration, or even not doing the animation at all and kind of like just jumping straight to it. But it does take some like additional thought to figure out how do you add this additional backdoor thing in here for testing purposes but continue to kind of do what you need to in production. I bet if you chose an animation library, they probably, well, if you chose a popular enough animation library, they probably have some good, like, specific documentation for their stuff.
So yeah,
I was gonna.
React Spring does not. And that's what I've been using a lot of.
Gotcha.
And also they don't do duration. You know, your React Spring is like duration adverse, which I very much like for the animations themselves, but you lose some control for testing and stuff like that. So am I still, I feel like I might be cutting in and out. Am I cutting in and out, or you guys am I doing okay?
It's not so bad.
Okay.
Yeah, you're just a little choppy. That's all.
Yeah. I'm getting a little, I got a warning that my internet connection was unstable. So, all right. Are there more, any more questions?
Yeah. Back when like Flash was kind of, a big deal, there were a lot of cool animations that happened in between pages instead of just like individual components. Are there any libraries that like if you're using a router and you're, as you move from page to page, is there anything that handles animations between those?
Yeah, that's a good question. The libraries that were discussed here today do have ways to integrate with, specifically with React Router, but really if you think about it, essentially what you're doing is just when you transition from one page to another, is there's different values that are changing, right? There's the location value of your browser. You're not on page 1 anymore. You're on page 2. Right. And there's different hydration values. There's HTTP requests going out to fetch values and bring them back to the app. And so those are just loading states, or they're just transitions, right? So we have to detect at some point in the app when we want to trigger the app rendering and when we want to trigger the loading rendering. And there are, and specific to, I know you can do that in both React Spring and Framer Motion, but in Framer Motion, they have on their website an example. I think it links to a code sandbox that demonstrates a setup with React Router. I'd have to do a little bit of searching on their page to find it, but maybe it's under examples. If you go to the bottom, I kind of remember it being at the bottom of one of the pages somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Examples. Yeah. Go to examples on Framer Motion. And then it says third-party libraries. Oh, look at that, John. It's the style components too. React Router and style components examples that links out to a code sandbox with not only the code, but the demo of it in action as well. So that'll show you kind of a setup for that. It does bring me to another point. One thing that I didn't talk about tonight is the unmount state of a lot of different components, which has been sort of tricky to figure out in the React world. How do you animate something off the screen when it's already been unmounted, right? When a component doesn't exist anymore. And so Framer Motion introduced this wrapper provider component called Animate Presence, which I'm not sharing my screen anymore, but essentially it does some sort of magic to enable the use of components even when they've been removed from the tree. So I think eventually there's some changes in React Core that will allow for you to not have to worry about that anymore, but there are some sort of shoehorn workarounds that you have to introduce in order to ensure the dismount of a component is handled gracefully. Of course, if you're just changing the opacity to 0, that's not a dismount, right? So there's just something else that you need to take into consideration there. But yeah, good question. I like your background too. Pretty dope.
Oh, all right. If
Anybody else?
yeah, if does anybody else have any more questions or comments, feedback?
Sebastian, Erica, Justin, Brandon, Lori, Allison, Bob.
Hey, thank you very much for putting this on. Appreciate it. It was very informative.
Good. Yeah. Hopefully you got something away from that. I know I was babbling a lot because I honestly did not. But hopefully there's some good value in there. So
Yeah, definitely.
a couple of things I really needed. React Spring is going to be incredibly useful for me. And it is, I don't know if you saw that in the chat, but it definitely is, it supports React Native.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, that's going to be really great. So
That's awesome. Sounds like a good fit.
terrific. Well, this is a good first experience. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Cheers. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate your hanging out tonight.
Good. Oh, and is there a link for tomorrow for 3?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's on the meetup. Let me get the. I will put a link in there in a second here. But yeah, I will also add my thanks to everybody who came. And thank you everybody for being patient while we work through any of the Zoom hiccups and everything. Hopefully, everybody had a good time. We're kind of learning on the fly with the remote stuff. So here's the all right, I just pasted the chat in for tomorrow's little chat thing. We're trying to do those every week. We missed last week, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, thanks again, everybody, for coming. Thank you so much to Dave. This was awesome. I love animation. I always screw it up. I very much was glad to see somebody who knows what they're doing talk about it for a while. It was really awesome for me, and hopefully we'll see all of you guys pretty soon. We got the meetup in 2 weeks from today for the our first like full-on workshop. We got our chat tomorrow and probably next week again. Keep an eye out. Hopefully you're getting the emails if you have actually joined the meetup. I've been trying to send emails every once in a while. Twitter is a good place. Join our Slack, that I posted there. And if you ever are looking for that Slack link in the future, it's also on our meetup, the homepage for the meetup group, and also on the website for the meetup group. And yeah, I don't know, John, do you have anything to add, or Dave, closing remarks, anything?
Thank you all very much. Dan said this earlier, but we are very interested to hear thoughts on how this went, how other stuff could go, like anything positive, negative, ideas, all that kind of stuff. We're definitely open to it. So please feel free to bring that up with whoever you feel comfortable doing that with.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that Meetup will send everybody that RSVP'd a little survey. So please fill it out. We look at them and they're useful. Whatever you were going to say, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, my closing comment would generally just be, if any of this stuff is interesting to you at all, I mean, any of the React stuff, if you're working on it at home or you're just learning, what I would encourage everybody in here is qualified to share what they're working on. Everybody in here is qualified to share what they know, or one corner of the thing that they just figured out yesterday. And so if you are interested in using React and you want to participate in a meetup like this, don't feel like you aren't qualified, because you are. You are human, you are smart, and I would encourage you to share a little bit about what you're working on as well. You don't need to know everything. You saw me plenty of times fake my way and lie through my teeth through some of the answers tonight to some of the questions. But you can do that. It's not a problem. And that's what we're here for, is to learn and encourage learning and encourage growth. So please don't feel like you can't step out of your comfort zone and act like the only difference between me and you is that I was allowed to be unmuted or whatever the admin tools are. So don't be afraid.
Number of cameras looking at them as well.
Yeah.
I think you have 3 right in your house right now.
Yeah. At any given time.
I was just glad we could see all of Dave's, face this time. Our first little chat, we just said
normally
the top.
It's so sad.
I
have a big webcam up here.
Yeah, going off of Dave's comment, I would say, even if you don't know a lot about a topic but want to learn about a topic, come talk to us and say, I want to teach about, I want to do a presentation about a topic, and then go learn about it and present what you learned. We can even do short ones. I've been there's other meetups that do like three presenters per meetup, like half-an-hour ones, which I think could be cool. So if there's anything anybody is jazzed about learning about or talking about, please just reach out to us, because we want to hear from more voices and more people. If anybody else doesn't have anything to add, I think we're going to close for the night. So everybody stay safe. I will be here tomorrow afternoon at 3, and hopefully we'll talk to some of you guys then. Otherwise, have a good night, and we'll see you guys sometime soon. All right.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.